Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, and we're going to talk about the Forever Wars, and we're specifically going to talk a little bit about how the Democrats talk about foreign policy, wars, and the military. All right, so let's jump into this. So first and foremost, welcome to Debate Day. It is December 19th, and tonight we're going to see the December 19th Los Angeles PBS NewsHour Politico debate number 6. Andrew Yang is going to be one of seven candidates, right? Going to be comforters, competitors, and one conqueror, right? And I'm incredibly excited. So I will see you. I'll be sitting next to you in spirit on debate night. And then as soon as that debate's done, I'll be taking all my notes, building up my script, and I will drop my commentary on the debate as soon as possible, right on the probably within an hour or two after the debate, right? That's my usual pattern. So I'll get that content together for you with fresh, take on how Andrew Yang wrecked everybody in the debate, which I'm pretty sure he's going to do, and I'm going to get that up for you right away. So be expecting that. All right, so let's talk about Andrew Yang and the Forever Wars and how Democrats talk about war and how Democrats talk about the military. But as a component of that, we need to talk about a very important film, which I think really reshapes how the whole world looks at war. Okay, and that is Michael Bay, Ryan Reynolds' Netflix movie Six Underground. This content contains spoilers for the 2019 movie Six Underground. All right, so what is Six Underground? Well, it's a fascinating new Michael Bay action film starring Ryan Reynolds, put out by Netflix, okay? And it's really, really interesting, right? Because the whole thing, it really was like written for people like me, right? So one, I really enjoy action films, right? But I do, I eat them up like potato chips. I love them. Die Hard, is the gold standard of action films. And then you have movies like The Long Kiss Goodnight, and the Fast and Furious are now really kind of action films. So it's a fantastic genre. I absolutely love it. But one of the reasons, but what this is really interesting, I don't like war movies. I absolutely do not like war movies. And the reason why is war is incredibly terrible, right? It's just it means that humanity has failed at diplomacy, and now people are, their life state is ending. That's not good. That's never good, right? And so so one of the things I really liked about this Six Underground is it just takes the military completely out, right? Like almost completely out. So Six Underground is about a privately funded spy operation, right? Funded by an American, right? And he brings together an operative team, okay? A team of agents, a team of operatives, and they're doing CIA stuff, which would normally be done by military people, but everybody in it. There's five. The team has 5 people in it: a grunt, a sniper, a spy, a scout, and a lead, right? And only the sniper is actually a military asset, is actually even an ex-military asset, right? So this film comes from the idea that all this kinetic action, right, is all being done by non-military people, right? And I think one of the reasons why this is coming forward is people don't really like to think or talk about what the military is doing in other countries. We really don't. We don't like to see it. We don't like to talk about it, any of that stuff. So like there's this new it's being served up as entertainment, the idea that you could have kinetic action and that CIA, type activity could be done by I'm not kidding, billionaires who privately funded them themselves, right? And I was like, wow, Michael Bay's rolling the dice on this one. Really, really fascinating topic, right? Now, first of all, if you like the action genre, I highly recommend this film. Ryan Reynolds is worth every penny that anybody pays him to be in any movie. He's fantastic. One of the best American actors. I think he's really great. But this movie was really, really fascinating. And the reason why I'm talking about it right now is the idea of kinetic action. So this movie had kinetic action, right? And kinetic action, the first time I heard this term, it was used in Jack Ryan, which is Amazon's actual like espionage show. But that show deals with military assets, and it talks about. Now let's get into the second part. Okay, so I really like this. So I was moving along and I was digging this Six Underground until they got to the part where they were saying what their operation was, right? And they said they were gonna do a coup. They were gonna overthrow the leader of Turkestan. I was like, Turkestan? What? So you're in the middle of this Six Underground movie. They're like putting in saying, oh, this is a cool espionage movie, and then they start talking about Turkestan, right? And I'm like, that's not a real country. There's no real leader of Turkestan. And they go forward, right? So now this is Michael Bay, and he's like, oh, who cares? Nothing really needs to be real or, matter, right? And so, like, the movie just kind of fell apart from there, right? And the reason why is you're dealing with Turkestan, right? So this idea, and honestly, Michael Bay's, this movie, it cannot be dismissed outright. Its plot is pure trash. Right, it just doesn't make any sense. It's trying to be. You can't be an espionage movie and not name real countries. That's just ridiculous, right? But you can't dismiss it as an action movie overall because it has one action scene, which is Ryan Reynolds actually sets his character, who he's the lead, sets up this situation where he creates a powerful magnet. He uses a magnet on board a yacht to draw everything and everyone that he has seeded with these metal ball bearings and like connect them to the sides of the yacht, right? It's incredible. This one scene alone is worth the price of admission on this movie, and the price of admission is pretty much free. Like the possum under my porch has Netflix. He shares our account. Don't tell Netflix, right? So like if you own Netflix, which I think there's 4 people in the world who don't now, you can watch this. It's essentially free, and it's worth watching for this one scene alone. And this is a Michael Bay action scene, man. Like this thing is like it when you get Michael Bay, you're bringing $50-100 million, right? Like that's the kind of money he can bring in. You got Ryan Reynolds there. He's going to have a funny quip. And then this action scene is not produced. It's nothing like anything seen in any other action movie, right? But this whole movie is kinetic action, right? Now, that's an important term, right? Now, I heard this term in Jack Ryan, right? And Jack Ryan season 2, they talk about Venezuela specifically, right? Like, they're not like Venezuela. It's like Venezuela. It's real, right? And there are, military, there's like some kind of executive who orders military people in the Jack Ryan, and he uses this term kinetic action. And the reason why we're talking about it right now is I think it's very important for us to start to talk about kinetic action, right? So let's move into this, right? So this is an opportunity for Andrew Yang. So right now, I think the Democrats have a huge problem, right? So one, the Republicans absolutely decimate the Democrats when it comes to talking about the military, right? Because they can, right? Like, basically they're like, oh yeah, we like the tools that the Republicans are like, we like the soldiers. We love the tools that the military uses, and frankly, we like the outputs, right? And we like when our soldiers are deployed and doing their thing, right? Like that, the Republicans are like, they can be excited about the military because they actually like what the military does, right? But the Dems got a big problem, right? Like every time a Dem's talking about the military, it gets really weird because they don't really like them to be deployed. They don't like any of the tools they use, right? And like, now, I think nobody disputes that the Dems like the soldiers themselves. But the reality is they don't like almost anything else connected to them, right? So the Dems are like, are we talking about the military right now? It gets weird, right? So here's the issue. Let's talk about where we're actually at right now, because this is the opportunity for Andrew Yang to change the conversation for the Dems, and for the Dems to start talking about the military and talking about wars in a real way that actually connects with Americans and sounds genuine, right? Because right now, the Dems don't sound genuine when they talk about the military or anything the military does. They just don't, right? By the way, I'm fully aware that Tulsi and Pete are soldiers, right? So they have a little more, leeway than the rest of them. But again, the Dems just don't sound like even Tulsi's a soldier saying we need to pull back every single soldier and make sure they're not deployed, right? Like pretty much, so like it gets odd, right? And frankly, Pete's a soldier, right? Where's the war stories? Like, you never hear him, right? Like, you don't hear him telling you, like, cool stories about, anything he did when he was there, right? He doesn't need to. It's not required. But my point is, like, the Dems have a real issue on this, right? So, all right, we're getting there. So this is the opportunity for Yang. Before I say it, I'm going to say this, okay? So one, I'm Scott Garibay, right? So, like, constantly, I'm like, Yang should do this, right? I'm not saying that here. I'm saying this is an opportunity for him to consider. I think he should consider what I'm about to say, and then him and his team should determine if they want to use it going forward. Because this is kind of a thought experiment for me, so I'm going to move forward carefully. Because I understand we're talking about the military and the work they do, and one of the end states of the work military people do is that soldiers come back, or soldiers, when they come back, their living state is not still fully preserved. That's not good, right? That's never a good outcome, right? All right. So where are we now and how do we get there, right? Well, guess what? America has had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. America's had 11 wars, and we're going to talk about every single one of them. All right. So one of the best metrics for wars in America is war deaths per 100,000 per a population of 100,000, okay? And these are U.S. soldiers that died in these wars, right? And so we're going to just whip right through them, right? So for every 100,000 people in America, this is the number of soldiers that died when they went to war in these wars, okay? So Revolutionary War, considerable, 113 deaths. War of 1812, 31 deaths. Mexican War, 78 deaths. Whoa, we just hit the Civil War, right? Guess what? Civil War is more than every other, I think it's more than double every other war combined. It is more than double of every other war combined. We got to stop right there. Let's talk about the Civil War, right? America rolls hard. We just, there ain't no country in the world like us. We are not even remotely in anybody's league, right? Because guess what? World War I and World War II, let's look at the numbers on them. So Spanish War was, the number on the Civil War was 1,965 deaths, right, from that metric. The Spanish-American War, 4 deaths. It's, very minor, right? World War I, 307, World War I, 126. World War II, 307, right? Did you hear that? World War I, 126. World War II, 307. Civil War, 1,965. Yes, you heard that right. When the whole world goes to war twice, right? It's less dangerous to America than where America gets mad at itself. Good Lord. That's, we do everything we do at an epic 10-gallon hat level that nobody else even approaches, right? And that's the thing about America. We don't beat people. We destroy, when we race people, we're at the end when they're off the blocks. We are just so far ahead of any other nation, we don't compete like anybody else. And that is because of freedom and liberty and awesomeness. And that's the red, white, and blue of America. Freedom, liberty, awesomeness. We compete at a level nobody else competes at, right? All right. Now, so you have that there, right? Let's kick through the last ones. Korean War, 24 deaths. Vietnam War, 32. Gulf War, 0. At that metric, it doesn't even add up to 1, right? Iraq and Afghanistan, 2, right? The numbers are low, right? So if you look at that, right, where are the problem wars, right? Like Revolution, Mexican War, Civil War, World War I, World War II. Huge problematic wars, right? Major losses, right? Now, there were some medium-sized wars in there that were massively problematic, right? Now, I do need to remind everybody, even the loss of a single soldier is a catastrophe, right? It is terrible, but it's also part of that job, right? And right now, it doesn't look like anybody in America ever thinks that part's going to go away completely, right? So, and that's my point, right? So what do we do with this? How do we deal with the forever war idea, right? Well, here's the language that I think Andrew Yang should adopt and how he should move forward with this, right? The forever wars are already gone. We're not in them. We are in the forever skirmishes. and all that's left is kinetic action, right? And it's been that way for 4 decades. 4 decades. We have had wars that are so minuscule they don't even go into double digits by the metrics we've used to measure these wars, right? And so the idea that we're in the forever wars now, it kind of, in my opinion, it's ridiculous. We're in the forever skirmishes, right? And this isn't a small thing. It means we have developed a system that for 4 decades, then the amount of activity that is required, right, the amount of loss required from the U.S. military is absolutely minimal, like ridiculously minimal, right? And so the question is, do we say, okay, we're in the forever skirmish times now, and the forever wars have been over since 1973. The last major real war America had was 1973, right? And that what's happening right now are incredibly controlled skirmishes, where America absolutely decimates its foe, right? Teaches the lesson that they need to teach and moves on, right? And this is risky for Andrew Yang to start to talk about this, right? But the reality is, we don't want to end up where we were before, right? Keeping the same comfortable nonsense noises that makes all the Democrats and all the liberals comfortable, and then losing, right? This is where, Trump is defeating the Dems, where the Dems can't have a real conversation about this, right? So if Andrew Yang comes forward and says, hey, I think we've actually defeated the forever wars, we're in the forever skirmishes, right? And what we want to do is we really want to maintain this level, right? This level is incredibly low. This is one of the lowest points of American loss that's ever existed. It's incredibly low, right? And the other thing is, of course, there are losses on the other side, right? And we should be talking about those, but not at election time, right? And the reason why is we should absolutely be talking about losses on the other side during Andrew Yang's presidency, right? And you want Andrew Yang to be talking about this with real talk, so he can get Americans to vote for him, Trump voters to vote for him, right? And this will draw Trump voters, trust and believe, right? And then when you have a person you can trust, who actually has a human heart and a human mind, right? Let's have those conversations about how we reduce losses on international troops, the troops that are skirmishing against U.S. troops. You can't have that conversation during an election. It's not a productive time to have that, right? It's really productive if you want to lose, and if you want to make sure that Trump stays president. It's productive for that. It's not productive for actually making a situation that is going to be safer for Americans and for internationals. It's not, okay? So that's the issue. Is I think Andrew Yang should pull the conversation from the forever wars are over. We're in the forever skirmish, right? And now let's have a conversation. Do we remain in forever skirmish, or do we attempt for a forever utopia? Because zero loss is a forever utopia. And remember that number for Iraq, right? By a metric of 100,000 Americans to each U.S. death, that number is 0 for the Iraq War, right? Now, I'm 100% aware that U.S. soldiers died there, of course, right? But the reason why we talk at these macro levels is it's not appropriate to talk at macro levels if you're like having dinner with, a family who has sons and daughters who are in the military. But when you're having when you're talking about who's going to be president, that's the macro level. That's what politics is. Politics is about getting the most good for the most people, right? And we all want to help those exception cases, but you govern at the macro level case, right? Because Andrew Yang can't walk around America and talk to 300 million people. You have to govern at the 300, right? And so I'm absolutely not trying to be dismissive in any way of any losses. I'm just trying to talk about this as a political issue, right? So I really feel like Andrew Yang has the opportunity here to change, to acknowledge the forever wars are over. We're in forever skirmish. Do we keep forever skirmish because it's incredibly low? It's the lowest losses we've ever seen for American soldiers in these skirmishes, and that really where we're at right now is 6 underground kinetic action, right? These aren't really. It's tough to even call these wars with these numbers, right? And especially when you look at like the Civil War, which was, man, like, the term war belongs there, right? So I think he should really think about changing the conversation and moving to this new language, right? And only because when you are governing, you need to have these macro level conversations, right? You never want to be, and of course, if we're ever in front of a family and we're talking about their son or daughter, you're going to talk at the exception level. But when you're governing, you govern at the macro level. So I think this is a real opportunity for Andrew Yang. It's uncomfortable. I totally understand that. And the only reason I'm saying that he should go down this road and begin to have this talk is I think, it's a real talk. It's a real conversation. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful, wonderful millennium.